Leaders Show. I'm your host, Adrian Evans, and I'm absolutely delighted today to have Cian Fitzpatrick. Hi, Cian. How you doing?
Good. How are you, Adrian?
Yeah, really good, really good. Good to see you on great form. And Dylan Fitzpatrick. Dylan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adrian. Good to catch up.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we've been trying to get this one in the diary for a while because we've got some really exciting news with some of the developments, and we love supporting new businesses that are great, getting off to a great start. And I'm really excited to hear the developments both of you have. So, without further ado, I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about yourselves and what you're up to at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'll take responsibility myself for being the cause of the delay with the with everything
No,
that kept popping up. So there'll probably be a few listeners who won't quite be too surprised by that. So I need to nuke that reputation. But
okay,
but happy to give a quick introduction, Adrian. So obviously, Cian Fitzpatrick is my name. I suppose I've just grown up in payments, lived in payments, similar to Dill when he introduced himself. But I guess across the last decade, half one of my career kind of revolved around the card acquiring space. You think e-commerce, you think physically walking into a store and what used to be sticking your card into a machine, which is through to everything like Apple Pay now and online payments. That was kind of half one. And then half two transitioned into the world where I'm at now. So over the last 5 years, in the foreign exchange cross-border
okay,
FX space, which is obviously quite broad, right? It can be global IBANs, it can be spot trading, it can be forwards, etc. So there's a whole big bad world out there that I won't get stuck into now because I'd be talking for the whole show. But that really is my background before we set up PayFX Global between Dylan and myself. So I'll let Dylan give a quick intro and then maybe a quick overview into what we're doing at PayFX Global.
nice. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Keane, as well. So Dylan is my name. I'm the younger brother of Keane and other co-founder of PayFX Global. So my career was a little bit different to Keane insofar as it started on the ed tech side,
Yeah,
but I guess very much on international business, right? So we took a partnership model approach out of Dublin,
yeah,
but our distribution partners were very much global. And I guess that was kind of my first introduction to global money movement,
yeah.
sending invoices to partners, exposure to FX. Really cool project with one of my good buddies, very good friends, a really exciting Irish entrepreneur, which led to acquisition, a whole lot of fun, a whole lot of learning. But then I guess with acquisition comes change, and that change naturally led me to the payment space. I
Yeah.
obviously had Cian in my ear from his time in the payments world. And there was a really interesting opportunity with the ever growing Revolut. So
Yeah.
to work in that space was again another hyper learning, hyper growth environment for me. But again, a real kind of nice introduction to payments, right? A really cool product in terms of spot payments and capability, FX, just global business and how money moves around the world was
Okay.
fascinating to me. So Revolut was a natural next step. And then obviously, I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit later, but that's what kind of led us both to PayFX Global.
Excellent, excellent. So it's a great story and great how that you started in ed tech and robotic. Was it robotics you were in to start with? Was that?
Yeah, it was virtual robots. Yeah, we taught kids how
Wow,
to code. Yeah.
awesome. Wow. And you're putting that together today. So tell me about the business today and what's the big problem you're solving for today?
Yeah, well, I think really what the two of us realized, and I won't go too much into it because I know Dylan's gonna dive into it at some point throughout the show. Uh,
Yeah,
he can rarely help himself when when the opportunity to talk about PayFX comes up. Neither can I, to be fair. But really, what it centered around, Adrian, is there's multiple providers all over the world. I mean, you know this as much as anyone, and all of them will tell you that they can do everything.
yeah,
And that everything can range from FX to cards to global, and global slash local accounts in multiple different countries, forwards, crypto,
yeah,
right through to stable coins, which is becoming prevalent now. But rarely can anyone actually do everything. There are usually players across the board that are really
yeah.
strong in certain areas, and can't really do the rest of it, which is fine and normal, and that's how businesses are built. So for us, our kind of idea came from, well, hang on a second, the common denominator between, all of these different providers is that they have clients who actually want what they have plus more. So they want the FX plus the IBANs, or they want the FX plus crypto, or they want all different solutions. And there's not really anything out there that does all of it. So the idea behind PayFX Global was, how about we create a layer? So you can call it a network, call it a marketplace, where you can connect all of the tier ones across those spaces, so that as a client, you can go to one place and avail of all of those different services. So I guess in a nutshell, that was the idea behind PayFX Global. And, we're off to a quick start. So it seems like we may have been onto something.
Well, it's great to see that. And I know with the fact that the way you conduct yourself with like the integrity, and you follow up and you follow through, and also the fact the depth and breadth of network you've got, I can see why that would happen. And obviously you're in a great place there in terms of Dubai, with ridiculous levels of innovation when it comes to tech, particularly in payments. So I wonder if we could dive right in, because I'm trying to ask you some of these questions. So he's consumed me over Christmas, by the way. So the first one is, what belief did you previously hold about payments, even going back 3 years ago? So take yourself back to 2023. What did you previously believe to be sort of absolutely true? Do you now look back and go, actually, that's no longer the case?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting question, because you could probably ask 10, 20 people that question and everybody will give you a different answer. But I think for me, the biggest shift, certainly over the last 3, even 5 years, is that payments has typically been seen as just a need to have / necessary evil. So in order to facilitate business in general, it doesn't matter what it is, you need the ability to collect money, and you need the ability to hold that money somewhere, right, for yourself. And then you need to send it and spend it and whatnot. And for most people, that's just part of the machine. I have to do this, but it's really associated with, oh, well, it's going to cost me X. It's seen as a big expense, right? Or certainly that was my perception of it as well, even while I was out there, selling it and trying to get people to use it. But I think really what's changed for me over the last 3 years, and it's become super prevalent, I suppose, over the last number of months with PayFX Global, is that I don't really see it as a necessary evil anymore. I think it's, far more clear to me that if you harness it in the right way, it's actually a big competitive advantage, right? And I've seen the conversation change over the years, from this being something that's a cost and cost only. So your conversation centers around, how much does it cost? How can I reduce that? This guy is giving it to me cheaper. To, okay, well, take the cost, put it to the side. What can this do for me? And a lot of it revolves around speed, right? And speed in business in general, even if you forget payments, is huge, right? How quickly can you get the stock to someone? How quickly can you deliver something to somebody? And that goes from sending things around the world to delivering me my meal at the restaurant. But in the context of payments and how I see this, if you have speed within your payments process, you can more efficiently use your working capital. You can delight clients in different jurisdictions and in different industries. So you can take, e-commerce, trade, finance, supply chain. You can move cargo quicker with the right level of speed. And when you take that mindset for payments, it no longer is a necessary evil, which by the way, is in my mind a few years ago. And you turn it into a competitive advantage. And I think the example of that, or the one I just gave you, is I've seen the conversation change from it being a cost to it becoming a competitive advantage. And when you have that, when you view it as a competitive advantage, you naturally drive more clients, you naturally drive client adoption, and you end up actually with more revenue in the cash register, right? So even though, of course, there's a cost to it, if you can scale your business efficiently by using payments as a competitive advantage, it changes the landscape for how you can operate your business. And I think for me, certainly, Adrian, over the last few years, my mindset has shifted way further away from it's a must-have, necessary evil, to being able to harness it as a competitive advantage within your business.
Well, I think we're going to dig into that a bit deeper and get some great examples out of that one. But just sort of shifting slightly here, so in terms of your business then, where do you see hidden friction that most outsiders wouldn't understand or wouldn't see? What's compelling for you from that perspective?
Yeah, it's a good question, Adrian, and there's kind of two different ways I'd like to answer this one. And I guess the first way, I suppose, from within PayFX Global, what kind of friction do we see as a business that outsiders probably wouldn't even consider? And by outsiders, maybe it's a client coming to us. So I know Cian spoke a little bit about what we bring to market, in terms of our marketplace of licensed FIs that are tier one and really good at what they do. So when we speak with a client, for example, they might be really impressed with the offering that we bring to market. So whether that's local IBANs and local access around the world, whether that be in the UK or in Europe, across North America, South America, Asia, or whether it's crypto settlement, the breadth, I guess, of solution that we bring through our network is world class. And I guess what clients maybe or outsiders wouldn't really think when all they're doing is they're getting access to all of this, right? But what actually goes on behind the scenes to get that level of access is, you know, in order to hold or touch money in any jurisdiction, as I'm sure you're aware, Adrian, you need to be licensed, right? And a licensed entity to do one of them things needs, you know, to delegate cost and resource in each of them jurisdictions. So I guess to do that, to have that level of access in each jurisdiction, it's a project, right? First to gain the license, but then also to maintain, Adrian, which is a huge lift and I guess a huge value add that we bring to market through our network. And I guess from the outside looking in, clients probably don't really understand the level of work that our network has gone to deliver that solution. I guess the second part of that question is, since we've started PayFX Global, what kind of friction exists in the market that others probably wouldn't really think of? And I guess what's been quite clear to myself and Cian since launching PayFX Global is, you know, if I'm to give an example, we've probably spoken, God, I can't even give you a number to how many clients we've spoken to about their onboarding experience within the payment space and other providers. And we've had clients speak to us, and the example I'll give you, or the analogy, Adrian, is almost like collecting a dog from the pound, right? They've had experiences. they've had such rough experiences with other providers where I guess some of these onboardings might even take up to 6 months to no avail, and throughout that process of onboarding, not even being given, you know, proper updates as to what's going on, and it's usually the client chasing the provider, what's the next step? Whereas for us at PayFX Global, what we think is, and I've spoken about this on LinkedIn, you might have seen, just letting the client know what's going on, right? So we strive to onboard all of our clients within, you know, 2-3 business days, and sometimes that's even 24 hours. But of course, some cases are a little bit more complex and it might require a little bit of EDD to get stuff done. But I guess communication is, you know, so key to let clients know what's going on. And I guess that's a pretty, call it, broad friction that we've certainly seen in the market. It's so common from other customers being burned by other providers, and we really are mitigating that with, call it, our white glove world-class service of onboarding that we're delivering to our customers.
Nice. So where does that come from? Sorry, I love the analogy there, but where does that come from? Because, you know, where does your mindset come from then? The fact that, because that to me is about two things. That's about relationships, and that's about investing in relationships to get access, which is a value add obviously to your clients. But then at the same time about onboarding, about saying, actually, you know, we want to make this white glove, and communication. So competency is one thing. Communication, as you were saying the other day, is really important. But where does that mindset come from both of you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of ways to answer that. I think for me as a user of any product in any industry, right, to understand what's actually going on in the background, call it a human touch maybe, Adrian, to actually be able to connect. And you spoke there about, you know, investing in relationships. If you can remove the transactional feel and you can shift from transaction to partnership, and really kind of delve into what the customer needs are and help them along the onboarding journey. Because you think about when you're onboarding a client, quote unquote, the iron is hot. So how do you strike when the iron is hot? And if their first experience with you is a really poor onboarding experience and they're left in the dark, well then they may or they may not onboard with you, but they're certainly not going to, you know, use you as prominently as they probably would have if their onboarding experience was, you know, quick and positive. So that's certainly, for me, that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose to add on to that maybe in a slightly different way, if you move away from the client experience for a minute, and this is probably going to sound like a really basic answer, Adrian, we've kind of been raised that way, which is a funny way to say. I mean, we've been lucky enough to have some really good mentors throughout our life. One of them would actually be our old man, so shout out Dad if you watch this. But one of the biggest lessons I'd say he ever taught both of us was that people do business with people. It's not businesses doing business with businesses. And what I mean by that is, yes, on a contract, you'll have two business names that sign with each other, but ultimately there's two humans on either end who, you should be able to go break some bread with, you should be able to go for a beer with, or whatever. And I suppose by being taught that really early on, our approach from a people first perspective is something that we've just naturally run with from the beginning. We've done it throughout our careers, and it's one of the most important pillars of what we're doing at PayFX Global. So I guess two slightly different ways to answer it that bring us to the same conclusion, Adrian, in terms of why we think that way.
Yeah, it's interesting for me. I've obviously known you for quite a while, Kian, and I recently had the pleasure of getting to know you, Dylan. But I've sort of sensed that both from both of your parents, and just I suppose the fact that it's not just in the DNA, but it's in the behaviours, and that's how you conduct yourself in every way. So shifting gears slightly here, what's the one thing that you think within the payments industry, if you were able to redesign one part of the ecosystem, and contextually, it's interesting for me here. Obviously, I'm in the UK, and we've got legacy systems, etc. Whereas I find, for instance, obviously in the Middle East, they're building something from scratch, so it's this very interesting place. They don't have this infrastructure to take out. They can literally put it on a white canvas. But be fascinated in your views on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll probably answer this a little bit differently to what you expect, because you're dead right. In the UK, obviously there's multiple different systems already in place, multiple different payment rails. They're doing it a little bit more from scratch out here. You'd be right in saying that. And there's multiple different innovations that are coming in to ultimately try to disrupt the legacy problems that you'd have with something like Swift. I think what's pretty interesting about it is that at every single turn of innovation, they've all missed one thing. Doesn't matter if it was the UK, doesn't matter if it was here, Asia, anywhere else. They've all missed basic transparency, right? And this is funny because it doesn't even require a redesign. So I might even be hitting left of your question, but I actually feel quite strongly about it. So bear with me for a sec. But I mean that across both cost and visibility of where money actually is when it's moving, right? And if I even cast back to, forget about FX for a minute, but back to my card acquiring days, what would be similar to margins in FX is called interchange, and the different fees, processing or acquiring, that are put on top of that in the card world. And typically people just would not know where the percentage is coming from and who's getting what. And obviously, as you know, there's been a couple of regions under I suppose under different payment services directives over the last number of years that have mandated that needs to be visible, right? And I think the shocking thing that most people found was that when you actually saw the breakdown of cost between interchange, and for anybody listening, the interchange piece obviously runs across card rails and schemes. So without trying to jump into a lesson, you have Visa, MasterCard, Amex, and they're the card payment rail, similar to what you would think of when you think of, Swift or SEPA. But when you actually see the breakdown up to what am I actually being charged by my provider, most people were hugely shocked by the percentage that was added by the acquirer or the processor rather than the base cost. And I think the transparency helped equalize the market. And I don't mean you need to go as really tight and low and cost competitive as you can just because it's visible. You can price based on the value that you bring to market. But I think that visibility makes the life of the CFO a hell of a lot easier. It actually shows why things may be more expensive. So if we flip back to FX for a second, and you talk about the African market in particular, where people might wonder why percentages are so high. If there's a bit of visibility on that, then it's okay. Well, it's a massively, some of these currencies can be, they can fluctuate like a stock market, right? They can go up and down, and therefore there's fair value in that. So I think where people have probably missed the mark globally is just that transparency on the cost side. And then also, I would say the same thing on the visibility side as well. I mean, how many times have we heard the story that money goes missing, nobody puts their hand up to say where it is. So if to say where the money is. So if we were blue sky in this, Adrian, a piece of technology that would literally hang on to the payment and give you a real-time update as to where your money is would be unbelievable, right? So maybe I did answer the question correctly, but yeah, certainly for me, Adrian, if we step aside from what most people might have said in terms of I'd redesign the whole network, or I do away with the banks and replace them with something like outside of that, I think transparency is a massive gap. That if you could design something really slick, simple, to show transparency both on cost and money movement, I think it would just make life a hell of a lot easier for everybody involved.
Brilliant. No, I love the I love a different take on that as well. And it's fascinating what you said there, because my son said to me the other day, he said he's obviously studying economics, etc. at university, and he said to me, Dad, it's easier for me to track a parcel from Asia than what it is to track a transaction.
He's right.
And I just look at my experience. I won't name the bank, but I had some money transferred a few months ago from Asia. This is going to be obvious to you guys. And I waited 9 days in, and then I get a letter through the post from my bank saying the money is now in your account. It'd been in there 3 days by the time I got the letter. And I was like, oh my God, I could, if it was just, if it was a parcel, yep, I would be able to do that. And that doesn't fill international business with confidence. So cross-border payment, I can see why you guys are in cross-border payment. There's a lot of friction and there's a lot of value that could be added in that space.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, we're sitting here talking about transparency being redesigning a part of the ecosystem. It should be table stakes, right? It should just be an absolute basic that you know where your money is, whether you're sending it or receiving it. So that's my 2 cents on what I'd change up on the market today.
Wonderful. So interesting for me then, what's the one decision that you've made that you look either back on or recently and go, actually, to others that might perceive to be quite risky? I'm fascinated with your answer to this one, by the way. Quite risky. I am gonna guess what I think you're gonna say, but there we go. But actually, to you, it made total sense.
Yeah, and I'll take this one, Adrian. And I guess the overarching feeling is why not sooner? So bear with me a second and let me dive into this one. So just to kind of set the scene a little bit. So myself and Cian, obviously both in the payment space, overperforming in our previous roles, relatively comfortable. I was obviously in Dublin with Revolut, and Cian in London with TransferMate running the EMEA region, and a clear pathway to progression, right? So life wasn't too bad, Adrian. We were doing all right. And I guess certainly for me, I guess my big risk, I suppose, was fulfillment. Maybe might be the word I would use. Just not being super fulfilled in the role, and without having a clear next step. I handed my notice in and decided to do a little bit of travel, which was, I guess, a little bit risky in itself, not really knowing what was going to be next, with no planned additional income, just a little bit of savings and whatnot. But with the travel actually meant a family reunion. And this will go back to, I guess, the story of Payfex and how we came to be. And it's one that, resonates with quite a few people when we speak about it, especially in the payment space. So we have another brother who's in Sydney. So shout out Ryan if you're listening to this. So that meant Singapore was the most logical kind of meeting hub for the family to get together. And I swear to God, it's as real as this, Adrian. Myself and Cian were having a Coke Zero, and no sugar. We were probably watching the calories. And we'd about an hour to go until dinner. And obviously I'd finished up at Revolut. Cian was still in his previous role. But naturally, the conversation was about payments. And for an hour, we just discussed a lot of the pain points that Cian would have touched on about trying to figure out solutions, even though the said provider mightn't have been best equipped to handle the client need. And I swear to God, after an hour, we left that table in Singapore with the bones of a business plan and a clear idea about Payfex Global. And I think a couple of weeks later, Cian's notice went in, and from the outside looking in, probably a risky move given our previous positions, but we're literally on the 57th floor here in a skyscraper in the middle of the desert, trying to drum up as much business as we can and have a load of fun in the process while we're doing it. And I guess to go full circle on that, I guess that's kind of why I said, why not sooner? So to us, it's inevitable. It really feels like the right thing. And nearly a year on now, I mean, the decision to leave comfort and chase I guess something that means a little bit more to myself and Cian, is one that I've absolutely no regrets about. I'm sure Cian has none either.
None.
And something that I'm absolutely delighted we did, and to really get out there, and especially being in Dubai in a fantastic global hub, really seeing what we were seeing, call it at a micro level in our previous role. It's almost like that issue on steroids out here, right? Global business is everywhere. And to be right in the middle of that hub and delivering a really, really good solution that, clients are asking for, are looking for, are wanting, and to stand over it and deliver it the way we do with our I guess our Payfex global touch on top, to deliver a really, really good service to our clients, and again, fostering relationships, or as we spoke about, and building partnerships. We've had conversations with clients over coffee here where they said, look guys, if this works, if the product you're saying works and does what it says on the tin, well then this is a 5-10 year partnership. This isn't transactional. So we are investing in the partnerships, and I guess that's why I would say, from a risky perspective, it to us felt inevitable, still feels inevitable, but from the outside looking in, it could almost look like a risky decision.
Well, I thought that story might come in at some point. Don't they say
I'm a
that
bit
all the best
passionate about it, Adrian. Sorry, I couldn't hold it in too much longer.
It just came. It just came. Don't they say that all the best businesses are either built around a kitchen table, in a coffee house, or in a bar? That's where most of them start. But I think that's I love that story for us. It's a very human story, but at the same time, it's well. Let me ask you further then. So that's why not earlier then? So what's that given you? Because obviously as a business owner myself, the big thing that I have is autonomy. Yep. I have the autonomy to make a significant difference to any business or person I'm actually working with. I can feel the passion, but if you were to articulate it in just a word or two, what's the difference with what you're now doing?
I think there's probably a couple of different things to that one, right? So autonomy rings true as well, Adrian. I think there's something really special about doing it with your brother as well.
Yeah.
Which I'm convinced transforms the entire experience of launching a business. We're coming for you, Collison brothers, but hopefully.
Yeah, there's a ring to that one, isn't it? Two Irish fellas, two Irish brothers. Yeah.
Apparently it works, so
Allegedly.
we'll roll the dice on it. But yeah, I think the sense that something is yours, Adrian, is probably outside of doing it with your brother, which is obviously a really special thing to do. I think that the sense of being able to own it, do it your way. You make a decision, it's yours. There's something really cool about almost having the pressure of when you make a call, it's yours. You can't turn to anybody else. If you don't do something, it doesn't get done. I think that's probably a big one for us, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. And then I was just trying to think how I could put it in a word or two, but I don't think I can. But yeah, echo very much of what Cian was saying there, to actually be doing it with, I guess, your brother, and being in the trenches. And I think it was actually, I posted about it before as well. It's like, when I went to Bali, a really good piece of advice was find yourself a co-founder. It makes the wins twice as good, but the losses half as bad. And I think being in the trenches daily with Cian is definitely been something that has added a huge amount of, call it passion, call it, I don't know, intrigue to my daily work life. When I spoke about being slightly unfulfilled when I was back in Dublin, I don't think them words have could or would ever cross my lips now with Payfex Global. It's something we take real pride in. So maybe pride is the word, if I was to summarize it in one or two words.
Nice. Yeah, the other thing that strikes me as well is you guys, you, you look like you're doing it with a smile on your face, and also you're having a lot of fun. And every time I see a post of you, I was like, I'm always looking like, well, what are they up to now? But whatever you're doing, success is one thing, but also connection and relationships. Whether it was back in Ireland and you're connecting with people, or you're doing that naturally in Dubai as well. But you look like you're having a lot of fun at the same time.
Well, I think it helps a lot with a lot of people when they start a business, and we won't shy away from it. Everybody talks about it, is what's your exit plan, right? So do you want to IPO this thing down the line? Do you want to just run it forever? Do you want to exit it in a trade sale or whatever? I think it makes it really easy to do the enjoy the journey part, because I'm convinced that we'll blink in 5-10 years will have gone by, and you might be at that stage of the business. But when you're, as we talked about it, we just spoke about it, when you're doing it with your brother, it makes the enjoying it part. Like, who doesn't want to go live somewhere like Dubai in a fantastic location, having a hell of a lot of fun with their brother as their job, you know. So it makes that enjoying the journey part a lot easier and a lot more real.
Yeah. Excellent. No, it's interesting for me, but the obviously a good friend of ours is Anand Patel, and I always remember him once, and he's always got. I always call him the smiliest man in payments. He's got the best teeth as well, and I remember him running.
Did he ask you to say that, Adrian?
Sorry.
Did he ask you to say that?
No, he'd take it up 7 levels. You know what he's like. But once we were on an offside once, and he was having a blast. Okay, like offsides can be a little bit sort of steady. Well, this wasn't. Okay, and I said to him over coffee, I said, look, break time. I said, are you? I said, you're just having a great time. And he said to me, if this ain't fun, I'm out. I could choose the environment to go to, not an arrogant way or whatever, but we got to have a blast. We know we can be successful here. So, and he just barely carried on being as he is, as we all know and love him. So, no, it was brilliant.
He's dead right. He's absolutely right.
So, just moving back to the industry then, what are we touched on it a bit, but what is the most underestimated? Let's start with the underestimated opportunity that's not being, because there's so many opportunities within payments. But what's the one opportunity that you see is absolutely paramount to take advantage of?
Yeah, I'll take this one, and you might have already gotten the answer from us in some previous questions. But I guess if you were to ask maybe 100 different leaders in fintech, or I'm sure we'll all get the same or very close similar versions of big opportunity in AI, in blockchain and stablecoin settlement and stuff like that. But I guess one of the things that I've been quite close to in the last couple of months and last 12 months or so is obviously, and we're all familiar with it, is AI, and it's coming, and whether you like it or not, it's going to be there. And while it's fantastic to have it for your internal systems and stuff like that, and there's a huge amount of value that it can bring to a business, I think one thing that we all need to be conscious of is AI eroding the human touch, right? And that's something that, in some version or another will probably happen across the landscape. So where does the opportunity lie? Well, there's kind of 2 pillars. One is, how do you leverage it? So how do you leverage it to make it a competitive advantage within your business? So internal systems and stuff like that. And it's something that we feel quite strongly about. But I guess the second part, the opportunity actually still lies in the human touch, right? And you talk about, eroding some of that with AI. And I mean, if I'm even something as simple like this morning going down for my coffee, why am I paying, 5 or 6 euro every day to get a coffee? Well, it's, it's the going down, seeing the familiar barista face. I could make the coffee up here at a fraction of a cost, but it's the human touch, right? It's conversational stuff like that. But bringing it back to the payment space, when I think of payments and I think of one word, and we'll probably all agree on it, what's so important is trust. So to trust somebody for your payments is huge. And I mean, there's a difference between, me or Keane sat here, speaking with you versus, a bot, for example. So there's a real opportunity to keep almost, double down on the human perspective, right? We really want to leverage AI internally, but then from a service delivery perspective, to be really serious Monday to Friday on, making sure payments are optimized, whatever the client needs. But then, 6 p.m. on a Friday, go and break bread, have a beer, enjoy the weekend, and then foster that relationship. What are kind of areas that can be improved? What are areas that are going well? And really kind of just having that relationship and investing in it. So I'd almost say that's probably the biggest opportunity to maintain in a world where it's kind of diminishing. Can you maintain and double down on a human level service delivery in the payment space? A massive opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the whole ecosystem is built around trust. You talk about buying your coffee, but whether you do a card or whether you do whatever wallet or whatever it may be these days, but everybody doesn't realize even buying that there possibly could be 8 or 9 different companies enabling that one coffee to be bought, all built on trust. And yeah, that's the very basis of the industry we're in.
Yeah, and it's super important, right? And we see it every day. I spoke about that one client engagement we had. If we get this right, it's a 5-10 year partnership, right? And in the payment space, partnerships are, super
Everything.
important. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah, you're not building a 10-year relationship with a piece of AI, right?
exactly.
Sorry, you just petrified me just now. I just envisaged when you said about, thank God we're all talking together about, would I ever do a podcast with a bot? That was a thought that has just never come into my mind until just now, and I think I'll be well out by then. I think I'll be gone.
Adrian, if you want our advice, don't.
Thanks a mil. Thanks a mil for that one, Keir. Brilliant, brilliant. So, what lesson have you learned the hard way that has changed how you lead?
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably answer. I'll grab this one. I'll probably answer it in two different ways, right? You already know from our perspective that people first is our focus in general. That is not just to do with client interactions or dealing with partners or different members of our network. It's also to do with the people that, we manage, we lead, we interact with within the team, which would be super important because we're obviously hiring now, right?
Yeah.
For Payfex as we continue to grow. But I think from a lessons perspective early on, there's two different things that certainly I learned at the get-go when I first started leading / managing. One of them is that there's no one size that fits all. Which is one that you learn pretty quick when you start trying to build a team and manage a team. And I guess what I mean by that is it doesn't mean that you can't have the same level of expectation in terms of performance. So in a sales organization, your performance is a revenue-based target or a client acquisition target. In a compliance, function, it could be a specific set of KPIs in terms of how you implement the due diligence policy or the number of cases that you get through a day. That's fine, and you need that. How that actually applies to how you manage people is completely different, and it's generally based on the person, their background, all that sort of stuff that makes people, right? And I think early on for me, I came in, very exuberant, very ready to go, and I had this great process that was going to work, and here's how we're all going to sell, and here's how we're going to do it. And then, of course, in 2 weeks, I went, that's not going to work. And what I learned pretty quickly from that served me today is that you really need to understand the person that you're working with or leading or whatever you want to call it before you start to implement a style of management. And I think that's really important because you can't just be a micromanager for everybody. You can't be laissez-faire for everybody. Some people need more of your time. Some people need less of your time. Some people do better working in different ways. And I literally mean that right down to working on a phone rather than a laptop, in an office, not in an office. So I think that's something that you learn pretty quickly, in that there's this fourth management style outside of democratic, laissez-faire, and what's the last one again? Democratic and autocratic. He's going back to my college days. There's a fourth one where you need to be able to, move between the three, right? Depending on who you're managing. So that was a quick one, but I think in terms of that's something that you naturally learn. I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned was I like to be really, really positive. I like to celebrate wins. For people, right? I don't believe in taking credit for anybody else's work. I hugely believe in celebrating a person when they're successful. However, when you're managing a team of, call it 10, 20 people, there is no scenario I've ever seen where all 10 or all 20 are all at 100% capacity, fit and firing the entire time. Yeah. But for each of the wins that my teams have had, I like to celebrate them. So everything from an email to recognition to all that sort of stuff. And I think one of the lessons that I learned, and it probably took me a little while to get a grasp of it, if you have a massive overperformer or a couple of overperformers, you're going to celebrate them all the time. They'll always be on the emails. They'll always get the recognition. And even though the overall goal is to celebrate, say, hey, look, team, we're winning. Let's get everybody motivated. Let's get fired up to keep winning. If you're the person that's maybe struggling or not quite winning every week, you can become disillusioned. You can become a little bit demotivated. So I think for me, I wouldn't say I had to dial back celebrating success, because obviously I don't think that anybody believes in that. But I think how you do it is really, really important. Because what motivates somebody might not motivate somebody else. I know I'm the type of person that I'm very competitive, right? So if I see somebody, like if you told me right now, here's another startup similar to yourself, they're 10 months old, and they're doing 1 million more in revenue than you, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to get them. That's my reaction. But other people might go, oh God, I could never do that. So I think for me, that was something that I reflected on pretty early, and I adjusted to, and it was fine. But that was definitely something that changed how I lead today, in terms of you need to be able to celebrate success, but in the same breath, almost motivate whoever might not be as successful at the time to find that same level of success. So I would say those are probably the couple of things for me that that have shaped how I would lead today.
Nice. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think it's but we only learn this situationally. So I'm just recounting practically all the same lessons when I was a leader of revenue, and the truth is, I think everybody needs a lift at some point. We all do, but then there's some self-reliance in there as well. But that's the whole point of, I always think sales and leadership is fundamentally, it's human behavior, it's human psychology. We're all in the psychology business, I think, because that's what makes the world go round.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, absolutely. And you have to, you can't do it if you're not self-reflective. If you just keep running in a straight line and you've got the blinkers on and you're not actually analyzing yourself, then you've got no hope. So I think that's a really important characteristic in a leader.
So just to go a little bit further then, so how important is self-awareness and self-reflection for you then?
Oh, huge, right? It's absolutely massive. So, I mean, if you even think about it, you can apply it to any aspect of life. You can apply it to your business. You can apply it to how you manage a team. You can apply it to your own health. You can apply it to your relationships. If you're not actually asking yourself at, regularly, and I don't mean you have to sit down and pull out a whiteboard and grade yourself in all areas of life, but if you're not actually analyzing how you behave, how you're interacting with others, how your business is performing, you're never really going to improve at any of it. So if I'm going to review my business every month, and if I'm going to review my fitness goals every month, why should I not be reviewing my own behavior, right? Why should I not be looking at how I'm interacting with people? People might treat me a particular way. Ask yourself why. So I think having a level of self-awareness is actually huge, because without that, you can't learn anything and you can't grow. You can't apply it externally and not internally, right? Because then you're just holding everything else to a standard that you don't even hold yourself to, which nobody's got any right to do. So yeah, I think it's quite important.
I actually think, just on that as well, some really good points there, Cian. And I don't know if you're familiar with Chris Williamson, Adrian, a really, really cool influencer that I would follow quite a lot on the socials. But what he always says is, what's tracked is measured, and what's measured is improved. So if you're talking about self-reflection and getting better, and even just take it from call it a business perspective, since we began PayFX Global, one thing that we do every month, at the end of the month, we'll pause, we'll get a coffee, no laptops, and we'll just chat about our performance of the month, what worked, what didn't, and we chuck out what didn't. You track it, you measure it, and you improve it, and you move on. So I mean, to fit that into what Keno was saying, in terms of self-reflection, that can be across every aspect of business, but also of your life. So it's a pretty important metric, I think.
I know as an exec coach and executive advisor, it's the awareness. I think it's self-improvement and business improvement is two simple things. It's expanded awareness and it's taking responsibility. Those two things, there's many matrix or whatever underneath those two things. But if we're not looking to expand and self-reflect on where we've got to, as to where we could get to, we haven't got the basis of change, and we haven't got the basis of coachability and then responsibility. So this is normally the time where I stop and try and get some salient points and some pull a summary together. But I've got pages of notes here. But can I just pull out the most salient notes on a conversation we've had? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think from the start, I think it was really interesting about the shift in the belief, the fact that payments has moved from this sort of need to have and this cost-driven component to actually a source of competitive advantage. I was sensing there as well that we're sort of on a bit of a start of a journey. There's so much more that can be done in that space as well. I think that the next part we really moved into was talking about onboarding with customers, a specific example, but I think it was more a reflection. And I think that actually the theme that I looked through all this is interesting. I think that the thing was about human connection, actually, was the biggest theme we were talking about. Because Dylan, when you talked about onboarding effectively, you really were talking about white glove service and that, but ultimately it's how that person, how confident they feel that you're going to deliver what you said you're going to do today, tomorrow, and in 12 months' time. And actually, you say that about being red hot, but at the time, you're trying to say when a customer's coming on board there, it's really important to make that happen, to build trust, because it could be, you're absolutely right, the best relationships and can be around for decades. I think then the next part we talked about, the big opportunity or the redesign of the ecosystem. I think you just hit it with just one word, which was transparency. You can see the opportunities within the industry, particularly across cross-border and FX. I just think that's definitely so many areas to do there. I think then in terms of, we brought it back then about another big opportunity within the industry, which is around AI. And I don't know anybody at the moment who hasn't used AI to dramatically improve, whether it's like we've just gone through a whole redesign of we've got like 12 different agents doing various things from a lead generation perspective to social media, etc. But that human touch, I tend to call it sort of humans in the loop. And I think it's really important that the humans brief the AIs, let the AIs do the heavy lifting, and then we'll make the decisions and do the evaluation afterwards. But then that opportunity to say, hey, all of this is for the purpose of human enhancement, and not to forget that, whether that's breaking bread with somebody, whether that's connecting with them in some way. I think it's a real opportunity. And I think that brought us down to that most important component, which is the basis of the industry, the very basis of what you're driving your business forward, which to me seems based on trust, the value of your network, and the value of connecting other individuals to solve significant problems, grow revenue, and mitigate risk. They were the most salient points that I took from today's conversation.
I tell you what, you have summarized that better than any AI ever could, Adrian.
I'm so proud of that. I'm so proud of that,
I actually am not joking. That was really, really well captured. Yeah, nail on the head, 100%.
Thank you. Thank you. So can I just leave the sort of final words to yourself in terms of, is there something that you'd like to leave us with as a final comment?
Yeah, sure. I mean, maybe I'll go first, and it's only because I didn't quite get a chance to respond to something that you said, Adrian. And I think that this kind of applies to the whole conversation. So whether we're talking about how you've summarized everything across the different elements of the payment world, whether you're talking about human connection, whether you're talking about self-reflection, you use a really, really good word at the very end of the last question, which was, after all of that, responsibility, right? And I think that's a really important word to pull out, because we can sit here and talk about transparency, and we can sit here and talk about being self-reflective, and we can sit here and talk about how we view the payments world, and then most important for our business, how we think we can impact it. But if you don't actually take responsibility to move on all of those things, so to actually implement something that improves the current processes, to actually implement and take responsibility for something that moves the needle on transparency, and then finally to take responsibility of yourself following self-reflection, well, then all it actually is talk, right? And as we all know, the three most important points of any plan are execution, execution, and execution. And you can only do that by taking responsibility. So I think I'd leave it with that sentiment, Adrian. You've used the word really, really well, and I think you can actually apply it to everything that we spoke about today. I don't know if you've anything to add, Dill.
Yeah, no. I would say, if I was to leave it with a couple of words, I guess, probably coming from a startup background before Revolut, and then now obviously with PayFX Global, to anyone listening that is kind of on the fence. I think we spoke earlier about why didn't we do it sooner. When you shift your mindset or your output, I guess, to 10, 12-hour days, all focusing on one thing. In this case, for myself and Keane, it's PayFX Global. And when you actually take the leap and do something, the output difference versus doing it on the side. So, for example, in a previous role, if you were thinking about starting a business, give it a couple of hours on the weekend and then touch base a week later, which we had done before, but didn't get into it in this. But actually shifting your, call it burn the boats, call it going all in, I guess, I couldn't encourage it more, fall in love with the process, fall in love with the hard work, fall in love with the failures, because when the sun shines, I swear to God, it shines a hell of a lot brighter than it does when it's something that doesn't satisfy you. So yeah, I'd kind of leave with that. Go all in.
Amazing. Well, can't think of a better place to leave the conversation. So thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you for your insights, and thank you for your passion. And obviously, I wish you extraordinary success in everything that you're doing, and look forward to seeing how the journey evolves. And it'd be great to get you back on the show at some point when more happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for having us on, Adrian. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Pleasure.
thank you,
Pleasure.
Take it easy, mate.